Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, your host of the Leaders Without podcast. Today, I have what do you call it? Repeat, back to back, triple repeat. This time, I have a fourth time. One of my wonderful friends from the podcast, and she is the second guest on the podcast to be back fourth time after my brother from another mother, Brian Tarr. Now it's Catherine Cooper. Catherine, we've connected around, I would say, what, 2, 3 months ago, and it was precisely through Brian that we got connected, if I'm not mistaken. And then, wow, both of you have been phenomenal guests on my podcast, amazing stories. And we were just chatting before, and wow, there's so much to talk to. And you were just giving me a glimpse of what we're gonna talk tonight, and I'm so excited because that's such a powerful story. I keep telling you that, Catherine, you have a few books in you, and I'm so delighted and honored that you're also one of the contributors from my upcoming book, Leaders with a Heart, based on it's going to be a collection of the 20 most impactful, inspiring, and powerful guests I've had over the past almost 2 years now, and over 200 episodes, 200 guests. You're one of the contributors, so that's super exciting. So, anyways, without any further ado, Catherine, welcome to the show, my friend. Again, welcome back.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm honored to be here. Never thought that this would ever happen. So, a big thank you to our friend Brian.
Oh yes.
Brian's been helping me with my podcasting. so, uh, there's a great deal to be grateful for.
Absolutely. Great. Being grateful is the one of the most powerful keywords in state of mind to be. Absolutely. So,
Yes.
Catherine, first and foremost, how are you today?
Well, I have this weird condition that reacts to air conditioning.
Oh,
And it comes out in my throat. So if I have to clear my throat, I apologize ahead of time. But
no worries.
there's no choice but to be in air conditioning because it's too hot.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. No worries. That's fine. And so today you will share with us an incredibly impactful, powerful, and inspiring story of the ultimate impact, and that is saving someone's life. So take us from the very beginning and share that powerful story with us, please.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I'm going to wind up a little bit what we did in our last podcast, and that
Hmm.
was with this job that I had had for 22 years with this unusual man who was very cunning and cold, and how I finally broke free of him. My life after that was, I felt at odds. I just felt at odds because it was something I had done for 22 years. It's a long time.
Sure.
And it becomes part of your life, it becomes part of your being. And yet, there were times in that job that I would be so tired. I would get home, stand in my doorway, taking off my coat and realizing that I was home and not knowing how I got there.
Oh, wow.
So I felt afterward it was a very difficult thing to adjust to life and what I was going to do. I had nearly a nervous breakdown after that. And so I went to try to do various religions.
Hmm.
But my first religion uh, was occurring in a very small church. And I had just heard about it, didn't know anyone there. And I walked into the church, and a very gracious man greeted me. And he said, "Oh, you're a little bit early. Let's go back and join the fellowship." And when we went back, there were small groups of people. And I noticed that one group seemed to be laughing and having such a great time. And he said, "Oh, that's Shirley. Shirley is just a really lovely person, and she's always got a kind word, and she's always happy. Let me introduce you to her." So he took me over to her little group, and she stopped talking, and he introduced us, and she took my hands, and she said, "I am so glad to meet you. Thank you for coming. We're grateful to have you. Could we get you some coffee or some tea?" And she was so gracious, Payman. And she
Wow.
was just so loving. You just felt embraced. And I don't think up until that time, being that I came from the professional world that I had come from, I had ever been treated like that. So I was just a little overwhelmed at her kindness, her thoughtfulness, her inclusiveness. I had never been included like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And so we chit chatted a bit, had our coffee, and the bell sounded that it was time for service. And she said, "Are you here alone?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Oh, would you like to join my family and me so that you don't have to sit alone?" And
Wow.
that had never happened to me either,
Sure.
to be included like that. And I thanked her and I did sit with them. Well, that whole little incident, it probably took 10 minutes. And yet, when I left the church, I couldn't get rid of a feeling that this woman was so special and how special she made me feel. And I kept thinking about her all day Sunday. I thought about her at work all day Monday. And on, I got home on Monday and I said, I'm going to write her a note. Now, writing for me was very simple because I'd done so much of it in my professional life, all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So, writing to find a nice little card and to write a little note of appreciation and thanks, that was no big deal. I had written many things for many people. Um, so I did. I sat down and wrote this little note and said that she was a very special person, that she made me feel loved, she made me feel welcome, she was so gracious, and I had never received treatment like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted her to understand that she was a special individual. It's not everybody that can do that.
Sure.
To take a total stranger and almost envelop them in your arms, And so I said, you carry a very special light in the world, and we're so grateful that you're here. And I called the minister and I said I had an unusual situation. Could he share her address? And he said, well, normally I don't, but I have a good feeling about this, so yes. So I went to church the following Sunday, and as I came in the door, Shirley was there, and she said, could I see you for just a moment? And I said, sure. And she said, I have something to talk to you about. And I said, oh, all right. So we went into a little conference room, and to me, it was a little odd that she closed the door. And I thought, what could be so secret? So I just let her talk, and she said, I have to ask you a question. Can you keep a secret? And I said, oh, I am so good at keeping secrets, you just wouldn't believe it. I have more secrets than I even know what to do with. And she said, well, the reason I ask is because I don't want this story to go out to my family. And I thought, story and family, what on earth is going on? And she said, I really need to understand that you won't tell anyone. And I said, well, you have my absolute word. So she said, well, I'm married to a brute. He's a very unpleasant, unkind man. And she said, I have children. They're all grown and they have their own children. And she said, sometimes life with him is so extremely difficult that I wanted to just get away. And she said it happened over several days that he was particularly verbally abusive, emotionally abusive. And she said, it just hit at the wrong time, and I decided I couldn't take anymore. I just couldn't take anymore. And so I went to my room and I got my gun and
Oh.
I went, oh my God. I was shocked. And I said, you can't be serious. And she said, oh, my dear, I am. But she said, I wrote a note to my children and I had it all prepared on the dresser. And she said, I sat down on the bed with the gun next to me. But she said, something told me I should go and check the mail. And so I didn't know why, but I got up and I thought, well, that'll be good. If there's any mail in it for me, I don't want him to see it. It's mine. So I walked out to the road to get the mail, and as I took it out of the box, this little note fell to the ground. And so I picked it up and looked at the handwriting, and I didn't recognize it. And then she said, I looked at the address, the return address, and I didn't recognize that either. And I thought, who could I be getting a note from? I don't know this person. Well, she said, I went back to the house and I looked through the mail further and threw most of it in the trash and sat down on my bed, and I was going to read this little note that I got. And so she said, it's a charming little note. I thought, isn't this sweet? It's got pretty little flowers on it. And I opened it up and I read it. And she said, I was absolutely astounded. And I read it again because I couldn't even believe that the note was for real.
Wow.
Never in my life, my dear, and she took my hands, never in my life has anyone been that loving, that
Oh,
sweet, that thoughtful. She said, I broke down into tears and I sobbed terribly. And I kept reading that little line that said, you are a special light in the world. She said, I couldn't even imagine anyone would ever
wow.
tell me. So she said, obviously, I didn't kill myself because I thought how unfair to my family and to all of my grandchildren to
To
think
the
that
world.
their mother, to know that their mother and their grandmother committed suicide. She
Mm-hmm.
said, that would be a little blight on their life
Sure.
for the rest of their lives. And she said, I really couldn't do that to them. So
Mm-hmm.
she said, I tore up the letter and I put the gun away. And she said, I want you to know that from this day forward, I will credit you for saving my life because nothing
Wow.
else could have done it.
So you sent her that message. Wow.
Yeah, it was astounding to me, just astounding.
This shows that things that for us can seem absolutely insignificant can be
Yes,
profoundly life changing, in this case, life saving for
yes,
people. Just a little note
yes,
of thanking someone, gratitude, and saying, hey, you're a special light in the world. That
yes,
message to a person at the right moment can be the difference
yes,
between life and death, literally.
yes,
Wow.
yes,
That is
yes,
powerful, beyond powerful.
yes,
Thank you for sharing it.
yes. Well, thank you for listening.
I
It
can listen to you,
really.
Catherine. I can listen to you all day, seriously, and I mean it. I'm not being polite. I really mean it. You know,
Oh, thank you, thank
this doesn't
you.
come from you. It comes from here. So,
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I always talk from.
ah,
Payman is I talk from my heart because I know
absolutely.
what's in there. Um, as a matter of fact, talking about this now just brings a tear to my eye because this lady
Mm,
was so sweet
mhm.
and everybody adored her. Who would
Yes.
ever look at her and think she was going to kill herself?
Yeah.
Ever. You
Yeah.
couldn't imagine it because, as I said, she was so sweet and she was always jovial and always helpful to people. You couldn't even imagine. So, my point there is when you're looking at someone, you don't know
Oh,
what
yes.
frame of mind they're in, you don't know where they're coming from. And they
Absolutely.
may seem like everything is just, as I kiddingly say, hunky dory wonderful. Um, but you don't know what's going on in another person's life. And that's what that taught me that day, I think, Payman, is to realize that you don't know, and nor did anyone ever know the pain, the misery, the loneliness that I had gone through because I never revealed it. I was always the perfect hostess. I was always the perfect um, helper. And so no one knew the torture that I was in inside,
You
and
know,
how a note like that to me
mm,
would have meant the world.
it's very interesting because I felt that way sometimes. There are people like that that are the first people to help other people,
Mhm.
but when it comes to helping themselves, they either don't dare or they do not ask for help. But these people also need help. I've been in in that position. I've been helping everyone around me, but I couldn't muster the courage, was it ego, pride, whatever you want to call it, to ask for help when I needed it. People thought I was in perfect position, always happy, smiling, laughing, sweet, and all that. But deep down, I was dying. I was going through a lot of
Mm,
almost like hell, but I didn't dare
sure.
to say it. And I'm
Yes.
sure most of us, if not all of us, have been in that position at some point in our life.
Yes. I think you're right, Payman. Um, and I did read an article, a couple of years ago, that was written by a psychoanalyst, and he had retired from his job. And they were interviewing him. Evidently, he had gained some type of acclaim in his
Hmm.
field. And they were talking to him about his patients and the impact that he may have had on them.
Hmm.
And he said, but there's always one thing that I practice, and I will until the day I die. When I'm talking with someone, I try, unless there's no way possible for me to stay in that conversation, but I will always attempt to never be the first to end a conversation,
Oh yes. Oh yes.
because you don't know where that person is at that particular moment, and you don't know how you might be delaying them from doing something drastic.
Hmm.
And that delay could lead them into a better frame of mind, a better frame of
Absolutely.
heart.
Giving them
And
hope
so, mhm.
that
And
someone
so
is
he said,
listening, someone
I,
cares.
right. And so he said, I try never to be the first to end a situation, a conversation. Sometimes he said you can't avoid it. But so, and I take that as well. So people think that I'm a real chatty Cathy. And yeah, I like to talk. But I do have the common sense as to when I'd like to be able to leave a conversation. But now I don't. I don't leave until they say, well, I have to go, or I have something I have to do, or someplace to be. And I say, oh, that's wonderful, great. It was so nice talking with you, and so forth. But I let them end it.
I've been honest to God. I've been also the same. I'm never the one to end a conversation. I never the one to hang up a phone call first. I always let the other person do it.
Yes, yes,
For me, I
yes.
thought it
You and
was
I
just
are alike.
me being polite because I don't like hanging up on people. Just let them hang up first.
Hmm.
And just the way you mentioned it, I had never looked at it from this perspective. That hey, maybe you delaying that, keeping the conversation open, that can be
Yes,
give hope to someone that might feel, hey, I matter. Someone actually cares
yes.
about me, even if you may
That's
not
right.
know that person.
That's right. Yes.
That's
Someone
powerful.
has interest in me. I do have worth. I do have
Yes.
value, because this person, who may not even know me very well, is paying attention. They're listening to me,
Yes.
and they're hearing me. And so maybe I'm not such a bad person, or I'm not so stupid, or I'm not so invaluable as I thought I was.
Totally. Absolutely. Wow. That's powerful. This is the kind of insight that is really that I love. Not only learning about, but also hearing it being emphasized on my podcast through my wonderful guests like you. So thank you for that again.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to share it. As I say, it kind of brought a tear to my eye to remember it, because she
Sure.
was such a dear, sweet lady. Lord,
Mm-hmm.
and she was just jovial all the time.
Sure.
And to know that she was going through that kind of torture uh, in her personal life was horrific. And I did get to meet him, her husband. a couple of years after that. And she's right. He was a brute. He was just a nasty person and didn't have anything good to say to anybody.
So, going back a little bit, when you
Hmm.
had that interaction with her in that little conference room in the church, how long
Yes.
after that had happened was that? After the moment that she was about to kill herself, but then she read your word. So, how long after that she actually told you about that?
Well, it was the next Sunday. So
Oh,
she
wow.
said, I got your note on Thursday. So I mailed it on Tuesday. She got
Hmm.
the note on Thursday. Thursday was the day she was going to end it. And I told her that following Sunday.
So, let's go back even further. What made you want to send her a message and not just wait until the next week, whatever, to tell her in person, for example?
Well, Payman, I have a sixth sense that
Mm,
I've relied on most of my life.
okay.
And something just saying she's she's sweet. Just think of how nice she made you feel, and that deserves some thanks. And I was always good back in the day before all of this electronics hit us. That was how we communicated. We communicated, let us know cards, and so I need to learn now to just to tell her, and and maybe I'll see her on Sunday, maybe I won't,
Yeah.
but at least she'll know that I'm grateful, I'm appreciative.
Are you still in touch with her? So, sorry, let me rephrase that.
Oh, she passed
How,
on. She
okay,
passed
so,
on.
okay. So let me rephrase that. So,
Yes.
after that happened, after she confided in you and told you what she did, how did that affected your relationship with her after that?
Well, because I'm very good at keeping secrets,
Mm-hmm.
and because you won't read from my face what's really going on. Um, it had really, she introduced me to her children, and some of her children and I got together socially after that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess that will, but I did see that uh, from time to time in that socialization. So, but I never revealed to anybody. I would never, ever, uh, I would never give up confidence.
Beautiful. Now, what was a lesson that you learned through that event? Because everything happens for us to learn lessons. So, what was a lesson for you to learn through that?
My lesson was to be a little more open
Mm-hmm.
with people, and that I had done the right thing. I had done the right by following my intuition and writing a note. And also, perhaps it made me understand that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as maybe unvaluable. There's no such word, but I'm not as bad a person as I have been thinking I am. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I just open up a little bit, um, I can help somebody else.
Sure. Wow. Beautiful. How did it affect you in your everyday life after that?
I think I paid a little more attention to people, um, and in a strange sort of way, it made me more intuitively sensitive to other people. So
Mhm.
I was a little more careful, perhaps, in what I said to people, how I delivered it, the tone of my voice, because we communicate not just in writing, but we communicate with our faces, we communicate with our the tone of our words, and there's a poem out, and it was never titled, I guess, but um, it's not what you say, but the tone in which you deliver it. That's important.
Absolutely.
So I had to watch my tone. My tone was always very professional and very pragmatic, and I tried to be a little more personable, a little more warm,
Mm-hmm.
because my profession before um, didn't really allow that. I had met with too many people who were very serious people, and
Mm-hmm.
serious in that they were in law enforcement um, and even the Secret Service when I would have to help with some dignitaries that were coming into town. So everything was always very matter of fact, very um, accurate, pinpointed, accurate, and that becomes a part of your personality. It doesn't allow your heart to show.
Totally.
So
Wow. This is powerful. I don't know what to say. This is very powerful. So powerful story.
well, it's something that I take as a very special gift.
Absolutely.
We're all in. That was the other thing I think I could say that I learned is that we're always in the right place at the right time. So
Absolutely.
where we are right now is where we're meant to be.
Totally.
Whether it seems pertinent, whether it seems valuable, logical, um, we are exactly where we're supposed to be at all times, even if it isn't in a good situation.
And if I may, if I want to add to that, what
Yes.
we're going through now not only is where we're meant to be, but that's going to prepare us for what's next, for our next stage. Because everything is
Mhm.
leveling up,
Yes.
even without us realizing it. Sometimes we may think, oh, we made the wrong choice. I made a mistake or whatever. I'm a goof or whatever. I'm a loser,
Right.
whatever. But no,
Yeah.
you're not. This is where you're meant to be. You will learn a lesson from it, and that's going to prepare you for the
Yep.
next stage of your journey, not only in this
Yes.
lifetime, but in the ones to come. Absolutely.
Yeah. We I think it taught me the value of people, that everyone does have a value,
Totally.
and that because again, the profession that I was in for 22 years didn't really teach me. It taught me human emotions because I dealt with a staff, but it didn't teach me about the value of people.
Hmm. Totally. No, I agree with that. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. This is powerful. This is why I love talking to you because, as I said, I can listen to you all day and you're just like a treasure trove of phenomenal stories, wisdom. So, wow. Let's call it a night at this stage, and then we can maybe resume with another story. Say next week, for example. Maybe we can make this like a weekly thing. Each week, a new story. Maybe I'm thinking out
I
loud and being a bit silly, but who knows? Maybe I might be because seriously, I just love these stories.
Well, I've certainly had, I think, an unusual life, and insights that most people don't get. Um, and I've had many as a collection. So
Hmm.
I don't know why life happened that way. But my mother, I guess I could go back to a little story about my mom
Sure.
when she was in her early 20s. She and her sister were living near Chicago. And her sister was a very dominant person. I didn't even like her. She had red hair like I did, and I always made my mother promise that I wasn't going to look like Aunt Margaret because I had red hair. And but she and her sister were going to have a night out or weekend out, And her sister wanted to go to a little fair. And my mom said she didn't really want to go, but her sister was very dominant, pulled her in and said, "We're going." And so my mom went along. And while they were there, they came upon a woman who read, I think, tea leaves, and she also had a crystal ball.
Wow.
And my aunt went in, and my mom didn't really want to go. But my aunt said, "We're here, you're going to go in. Stop being, such a naysayer." So my mom went in. And the lady told her that some things that were going to happen to her in the fair near future. And she said, "But later in life, you'll have a little girl. You won't be prepared for her because she'll be an unusual little girl. And she'll find that she's not well accepted in the world. And yet she will heal people. And she will do so through her voice and her words. And
Wow.
she'll do so also through the atmosphere about her." And isn't it funny? I can remember my mom relaying this story to me.
Yes.
And so she said, when your little girl grows up, it'll be, excuse me, it'll be much later in her life, but she will touch people in a way that no one is prepared for.
See?
So she said it will be a very difficult life for her, and yet she will have something to say at the end of it all. And then when I was 18 and being a waitress in this little restaurant, there was a man in town who was an attorney. He was an Irishman, and his reputation was such that he would not represent anyone that he felt was guilty, unlike today.
Yes. Wow.
And Emmett McCarthy was his name, and he had shock white hair, and he was a very stout man, and he walked with a great deal of purpose. So you knew he meant business. Well, he would come into this little restaurant every Sunday afternoon at about 3 o'clock. And he always terrified me because of his very stern kind of,
Yeah. Yeah.
attitude and his way. Well, one day, the waitress that always waited on him wasn't going to be there. And she said, "Well, dear, you're going to have to take care of him." And I said, "No, I can't do that. No, he scares me." And she said, "Now he's very nice." And I said, "No, he's not. He's not going to like me. I'm gonna drop the tea in his lap. That's what I'll do." And she said, "Oh, stop being so silly." So she told me how to serve him because he was very precise. And she told me how to serve him, and I did that. He came in, and oh, my heart was just in my throat. Oh, my Payman, I was just so scared. But I got his tea. I got the 2 pots that he wanted. I set them down, and he thanked me, and he placed his order for his food because he would have to have his tea before his food. So I got the order in, and I brought it to him. And when I delivered it, he looked at me and he said, "You're a very unusual person." And I thought, "How would you know? You don't know me. And I'm not so unusual. I'm just everyday, ordinary, average. And he said, "You're going to have a hard time in life because people don't accept you.
Wow.
And because you're unusual, you have something that most people don't, and they recognize that." And he said, "I want you to remember that out there, it's a very large sea of ordinary.
Yes.
And in that large sea of ordinary, there are a lot of sharks." And he said, "My dear, they're going to eat you alive." So he said, "Be very careful with whom you associate, because he said most of them won't mean you well." So he said, "You're going to spend a lot of time alone in life." And he said, "I'm really sorry for that. But he said, that's just the way it's going to be."
Wow.
So I'm thinking, many years later, how would he ever be able to know that about me? And he was absolutely right.
You know,
Absolutely.
there's some conversation we have with people, whether they're people we know, people we don't know, meet for the first time. They may say one
Mm-hmm.
or two words or one or two sentences that we'll always remember.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that this was one such interaction with you. You know,
Mm-hmm.
some people just know, and maybe they're brought here and it was a way to guide us, to warn us, to prepare us, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a random, encounter. There was a purpose, a reason for that
That's right.
encounter for you, for the regular waitress not to be there on that afternoon, and for you to fill in for her, so that she can deliver, so that this gentleman can deliver the message that he was meant to deliver for you.
Exactly.
It's how
Is
beautiful
a
how
life marvelous.
everything is related, without us
Yes.
being aware of it.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It was wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. So, as I say, I've had an unusual life because things like that kind of thing have happened and in rare occasions. So it's fun to share and perhaps whatever I'm offering, perhaps it might be of insight or help
Mhm.
to someone. So I've
You
learned
know,
not to keep everything to myself.
absolutely. And this is, from my understanding, one of the most powerful and meaningful, reasons why we are here. Not just for us to overcome obstacles. Sure, we all go to our
Hmm.
fair share of, dark times, tragedies, obstacle challenges, and they hurt a lot when we're going through them. But then they
Yes.
become our story, then that story becomes our gift, and that gift becomes ultimately our
Hmm.
responsibility to share it with the world. Because if all we did was just overcome the obstacles and become a better person and learn from them, that's nice. But we'd only be using tapping into 5% of the full potential. The other 95% is taking those lessons and sharing them with the
Hmm.
world. So,
Yes.
and you're doing just that. And we are talking earlier, what could be the topic of your chapter? And this is exactly what could be. This is what my book is about, is how you're using your gifts, your lessons, and making the world a better place by impacting even one person, one soul. That's enough,
Yes.
because as long as me and you, and that's one of the premises of my podcast, me and you and all the other 210 wonderful guests I had, if we can inspire just one person to do good and help them, then
Yes.
as far as I'm concerned, then my podcast has been a success. And this is what we all hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for having that and for
Pleasure's
having
all
the
mine.
insight to go ahead and deliver that because it's a very valuable thing that you offer. So
Thank you.
for all of us who haven't said thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure's all mine. I feel honored and blessed to be doing what I'm doing, to be talking with these wonderful souls like you and Brian and so many other 200 plus wonderful people. And this is, one of the questions I ask in my podcast at the end of each podcast is, what is the smallest thing you've done in your life that has had the greatest positive impact in both your life and business? And for me, without hesitation, has been starting my podcast, because that podcast has completely changed my life. It's blessed it in many ways. Each
Hmm.
morning, one of the first thing I do is I do this. I kiss my microphone, because that's been a life changer for me.
Hmm.
And that little thing. So
Yes.
yeah, so wow. So you have a lot to give, even though your life at times, based on what you're telling me, might have been quite challenging, quite difficult at some moments. But all of these were a blessing for you, because you were meant to go through those. And now you're in a position to take those wonderful gifts and then share them with the world. Bless the world with those bits of wisdom and golds of wisdom that you've been blessed with. So now do whatever you can to get those gifts far and wide. And I'm so blessed and honored that I'm helping you in my little way to my podcast, having you share your stories, and now to the book, and hopefully so much more, so many more things. So I honestly, I'm one of the things I'm grateful is connecting with the people on my podcast and connecting with incredible people like you. Because for me, my podcast is about showcasing wonderful people with beautiful hearts and powerful messages to get the words out so that they win and we can all win together.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not, and that's one of the things that I don't care for so much, um, because I have all these years um, of accumulation of
Mm-hmm.
various segments of life. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the segments, as I said, was we lived in a time when people actually communicated. They talked to each other. They walked down the street and they would nod. They would say, "Hello, how are you?" And you wouldn't have to have a long conversation. It was just, "Hello, how are you?" And
Exactly.
we don't do that anymore. Now we're
Yes.
afraid to look at people, and almost rightly so. I mean, I was attacked once in my life. I had that very unpleasant experience, and it was because I looked at someone.
Oh no.
You see, and so you learn not to look. You learn to glance away or just
To
pretend you
adapt.
don't see them. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a safety precaution. I get that, but it's a sad, sad tale for society um, when we have to behave like that, when we have to squash or squelch the inner part of us that wants to greet and be friendly and say hello, how are you today, and what's going on, or just to nod your head and say hello. Um, it's a marvelous thing that we used to have it. We used to write letters. We used to write
Oh
these little
yes.
cards, and we couldn't always pick up the phone because in those days picking up the phone was very expensive because
Sure.
you had to pay per the
Minute.
area that you were, yeah, well, and not only minutes but per the area that you were calling to. Each
Yes.
area had a very um, um, cost. It had a varied cost to it. So I could talk for 20 miles away, but that was expensive. And so if I talked to 10 miles away, that was less expensive. Uh, you
Sure.
paid for you paid for long distance calls, and you stayed on them like 2 minutes because you couldn't afford them.
I remember the
And
times that when we had to buy, those calling cards to call internationally, Do you remember those?
oh yes,
For
yes,
example, when I was when we were in Canada talking to friends and relatives, say in Europe or in Asia or in South America, I had to get those calling cards, and it was a different world indeed. Yes.
yes. So that's why I think that what we have now with electronics, I'm not saying that it's all bad. There are some very good points to it, but it has really not brought in many ways that it used to, people communicating used to be brought together. But in some instances, it all keeps us apart.
Yes. It has, in one way, it has made the world smaller, but in other ways, it has made us, separated from each other, even from our neighbor. For example, you go to a
Yes.
to a to a party, or you go on in a plane and a train.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's on the phone, sitting together on the phone, as opposed to
Yeah,
communicating.
yeah,
They might be
yeah.
communicating with someone
And
else at another city or another country or the side of the world, but the person sitting next to them, nope.
nope, nope, not at all. And that's kind of sad.
Yes,
So that's
indeed.
part of the electronic age that we're in that I don't care for at all,
Yeah.
because I think things would be an awful lot better. But it'll change, and there will be things that'll come along that will make us change. Um,
Do you think that we
it'll
can
take it be
find?
taken.
Do you think we can find the perfect balance between all the convenience of technology and the human touch, the social touch of just in-person communication?
I don't think we will find a perfect balance, no, because there's another answer to perfect balance, and has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with electronics.
Yeah.
So there is there's not going to be a perfect balance until we start looking internally, and most of us are afraid to do that.
Indeed.
Um, Many years ago, I was listening to a program on the radio, and it was a psychologist or a psychiatrist, whichever, um, saying that if you can spend 1 hour by yourself without in that day, without being on the telephone, listening to the radio, the television, or your stereo, and just being totally quiet, then there's something wrong within you. And you better start
Wow.
looking for it because you are afraid of yourself. And I never forgot that. I thought that's a very powerful thing to say. You're afraid of yourself. You're afraid of what's going on in there, and you don't want to face it. So you have all these distractions on around you. Well, now, Payman, we have 100 times more distractions than we ever did then. So what does that say about our society?
Totally. It
Yeah,
is.
we're afraid to look within, and that's what I want to do with my business. Um, and I enjoyed talking with people. I think more in a group than I do transformational coaching, but
Mm-hmm.
that's a different genre almost. And so I enjoy talking with you. I enjoy talking with small groups of people um, to see just what we can offer
Mm-hmm.
just as a seed. If I can plant a seed, it doesn't have to grow right now,
Yeah.
but um, maybe it'll grow in a year or 10 years.
Yeah.
Somewhere down the line, it will come up to them as these things have come back to my memory, like the Irishman. And so maybe we'll achieve a better balance somewhere
Sure.
along the line, but there is a great deal more that we need to do before we're going to
Sure.
find it.
In some way, we have very similar goals because, just like you said, planting a seed for me is inspiring someone, lighting a fire under in their mind to say, "Hey, I
Mhm.
can do more. I can. There's more to life than just what I'm doing." Just plant the seed, just
Mhm.
like you perfectly put it. So this is all about inspiring, empowering, and just pushing people to, to go after the dreams, to follow their intuition, to follow their heart.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what I want to do is to help people in my business. Kay Cooper, life strategist. Somebody asked me, why did you decide on that name? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, life strategist is because I've learned that life is a strategy. It's
Sure.
many strategies all
Mm-hmm.
together. And if you can discover the key, which I never did, and it was very painful for me, if you can discover the keys to those strategies, if you can discover them themselves, you will go on and soar beyond your wildest dreams.
Sure.
But until you do, you're just going to walk around like I did, walk around in the dark with this shroud over your head. You can't see one foot in front of the other, don't know what's coming. I only know what's been. And life is very unpleasant in that aspect.
Totally. Totally. It's no, absolutely. We will do another
So
episode. Yeah.
that's why I wanted to say that I think that in my business, that's what I hope to do is I hope to help people to discover their North Star. And
Hmm.
everybody has one.
Tell us, how do you do that? How do you help your clients achieve that?
Well, with each client, it's different.
Sure.
It's a unique experience with each client because some people are running away and some people are running too fast forward, and some people have too much on their agendas. We have to
Hmm.
discover what's wrong,
Sure.
what's out of balance, and if we can discover what's out of balance, then we can start picking apart pieces to reassemble and construct a balance and a logic. And a lot of
Hmm.
people don't have logic.
Absolutely. Wow. Who would you say is your ideal client?
Someone that's open, someone
Yes.
that really does want to change,
Hmm.
um, and someone who's willing to try something different.
Absolutely. They have to be coachable, not just close
Yes,
minded.
yes,
Hmm.
yes. And I tell people, I can be very direct, and I will be very direct. I'm not going to sit here and waste time um, kind of talking around issues, and I'm going to put it down on the table. Cards are face up, and that's how you will gain um, a relationship, so to speak, with me, is when you put your cards face up on the table, and we'll deal with what is, because there's enough of this nonsense of trying to hide from the boogeyman. Um,
Absolutely.
let's find out the name of the boogeyman. Let's find out what he looks like, and then we'll dispel him.
Totally. Wow. How long have you been doing this business?
Really, not very long. I've been talking to people all my life. I've had
Sure.
tons of people coming to me for advice, which was kind of amazing to me at times. I'm thinking, why would you pick me? Of all the people you knew, why would you pick me? But I've had Kay Cooper Life Strategist for about 7 years, and graduated from Jack Canfield's school, and became certified as a public speaker and a transformational coach. And that's about 7, 8 years now.
Hmm. Wow. So, what would you say has been so far the most remarkable transformation you've seen from one of your clients so far?
It was a young girl who, when she came to talk to me, had no idea that she was going to be in it for the long haul.
Hmm.
Excuse me. She had no idea. And it started very innocently, and we just chatted. And I became aware of the fact that she was scared, she was lonely. And so we had a long talk. And when she would leave, I would say to her, now, did you learn anything from our talk? And do you feel any better? And she'd say, yeah, I do. And then I thought, well, we'll really see if she does learn anything, if she does really feel better, if she comes back. And she
Hmm.
came back, and she came back, and she came back. And finally, that scared little chicken, that's what I affectionately called her, was my scared little chicken. And I put my arms around her when I said it. And I said, I used to be just like you. And so I know where you're coming from. But she actually um, stopped the job that she was in, that she didn't like, and got the nerve to apply for um, a better position, something that she was going to be happier in.
Hmm.
And she went for it. I really had to push her a little bit. I had to lovingly push her, but she made it. And I was so grateful, because she went on to be a much happier, much more fulfilled young woman. And she really blossomed into a young woman instead of a
Wow.
scared little chicken.
Beautiful. Wow. You know, what I experience myself when I keep telling it all day long on my podcast is that the two greatest rewards from businesses are one, the transformation you see in the lives of the people you help, and two, the
Mhm.
beautiful friendships you build along the way. The money is icing on the cake, it's not the cake. But the cake is the transformations you build around the people you work with and the wonderful friendships you build, because those are absolutely invaluable.
Yeah, yeah, Yeah. And my scared little chicken even had a boyfriend who I knew wasn't going to be good for her. And but I had to help her discover that on her own without
Yes.
telling her.
Mm-hmm.
And she finally made the switch. I
Good.
don't know what happened to her after that, but I know that she did get a job that she was happy at, that she was fulfilling to her, and that for me was a big reward because she was certainly deserving, and so that makes me feel good. That makes me feel alive.
Absolutely. No, this is powerful. This is beautiful. This is what we are here for. To share our, just like I said earlier, to share a gift with others so you don't make the same mistakes, you don't go through the same pain that we went through, and help others make the world a better place.
Absolutely. Well, I found a quote on the other day I'll share with you. It says, "The greatest good you can do for another is not just share your riches, but reveal to them
Go.
the great the greatest good you can do for another is not just share your riches, but to reveal to them their own."
Oh, wow. That is indeed powerful. Yes. That's
I
awesome.
really like that. I think it's going to become part of my Facebook page. It's going to become part of um, anything that I write. And the other one that I shared with you just a little bit ago, maybe a month or so ago, was um, to always have the power to love, but
Oh,
watch
yes.
out for the love of power.
Oh, I'm going to write this down. Yes. Say it again, please. Uh, okay.
Um, have the power to love, but be aware of the love of power. But beware. That's what I should say. Beware of the love of power.
What was the first quote you mentioned before that about revealing the? Okay, yeah. The greatest gift is not to help someone.
Now, the greatest good that you can do for another is not just share your riches, but reveal to them their own.
Mm-hmm.
So bring out the richness in each person. Bring out their
Absolutely.
gifts. Help them to find what their gifts are.
Absolutely.
Because too many times, we get stuck as young people, we get stuck sometimes with parents who insist that we become, I don't know, an engineer or a doctor
What
or
they want.
an
Yes.
attorney, um, and you get into that and you're not happy in it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
no one ever asked you what you want to do. What will make you feel fulfilled?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I
Now
think
this
as
is true.
parents, we need to, as parents, they need to draw that out of their children as to really what are their gifts, not what do you hope their gifts are, and
Mm-hmm.
not what you hope they will become, but what do they have within them that will make them excel as a person. And maybe they will be a bricklayer instead of an attorney, but that's
Yes.
good,
Let them
you
be a
see.
bricklayer if
So
that makes them happy. Yes.
that's right. That's right. So, we need to allow others to have their strengths and their talents become a reality. And I think there are too many people walking around who are totally unaware. They know that they're unhappy or they know that they're dissatisfied in some way, but they really don't know what it is they want to do.
Totally. Absolutely. I've seen that countless times around me. Yes. Listen, Catherine, as always, absolute pleasure talking to you. Let's call this a night for now. I have another call in a few minutes, and I'm looking forward to the next episode in the near future. So, and one last question: if someone wants to connect with you, what's the best way to do so?
Well, they can connect with me on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
Kate Cooper, Life Strategist.
Okay.
They can also email me, and that's kcooperlife@gmail.com. And the K is spelled Caye.
Beautiful. I'll put in the show notes. So, listen, Catherine, as always, an absolute pleasure talking to you. I salute you. You're a wonderful, enlightened soul. You're a true leader with a heart. Keep shining your light. Keep blessing the world with your presence, with your impact, with your wisdom, with your smile, with everything you're doing. Keep being you. Keep blessing your world with your presence. Stay safe. Stay awesome. God bless you, my wonderful friend. And I'll talk to
Oh,
you very
God
soon.
bless you. And thank you. Thank you
Take
very,
care.
very much. God bless you, Payman.
Very
Good
welcome.
night.
Take care. Bye bye.